Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas.
Welcome to the Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers of Washington and its monthly author showcase. I am your host, Peter Stockwell, first elf on this fourth Christmas show of Claw on the Bremerton Kitsap Access Television Network. I think I hear Santa Claus, that ringing bells. Father Claus in Christmas, you know. St. Nick, the person who has all the goodies and the presents and goes down the chimney. Here he is. He eats all the cookies, too. And is that Rudolph?
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. Merry mask-free Christmas. I've had so many vaccinations, I feel like a pincushion. I'm his partner in crime is Santa, Mark Miller, with additional help from a reindeer named Rudolph, also known as Sherry Miller.
Lead reindeer.
Lead reindeer. Yep.
Santa and I have had all of our shots, and so have all the reindeer.
As have I.
We have a full-time medical staff at our disposal. We'll try to show our vaccination cards as we fly by in my sleigh.
This is Claw at BCAT's fourth annual Christmas show. Mark and I have been involved in this production for over 3 years now, so we thought it was time for another fun show about this particular day, Christmas, with all of its cultural, religious, and social connections. This is especially needed during this time of this viral sickness. We hope to highlight some of the more uplifting excerpts from the works of our authors and artists.
We have readings from some of the works provided by authors and other sources.
The readings will help us to create a Christmas spirit of joy and companionship with friends and family.
Yes, for no matter what your spiritual beliefs are, Christmas has become a time of brother and sisterhood, of spending time with family and loved ones.
And of reindeer and elves getting Christmas bonuses for all the extra hours we put in so we can get presents for our loved ones. Although all those cargo ships waiting for offloading is putting a kink in our retail and wholesale sources.
Yeah, maybe Santa, we could come up with a different distribution system.
Yes, it would be better.
Anyway, speaking of our bringing joy, we do have readings that are going to be taking place. Our first author is actually going to be Santa himself, with a story about Christmas and the police.
Yes. 'Twas the night before Christmas on this snowy white day. Nick was feeling quite pleased as they flew on their way, when suddenly one of the sleigh's runners came loose. He called to his deer, "We must tighten the screws." He whistled instructions as they dashed towards the ground, but the parking was hopeless. Not a spot could be found. "Whoa there!" Nick cried in a sharp, urgent tone, and he directed the sleigh to a no parking zone. "We need a screwdriver to get on our way. Come on, boys, let's find one. We must not delay." They knew that the runner must quickly be mended, so they covered the toys, left the sleigh untended. Two highway patrolmen came cruising along and spotted the sleigh. They knew something was wrong. One officer circled it, looked for the owner, uncovered the back space. The toys made him wonder. Now, who could have left all those things to be stolen? And shaking his head, called the other patrolman. Then what happened next wouldn't have happened that day had they known the contraption was St. Nicholas's sleigh. Officers impounded the sleigh with its load, then ended their shift. They both headed for home. Dear Santa, meanwhile, with his sleigh and with his reindeer in tow, purchased a tool and called, Come on, boys, let's go." But they were dismayed when they all arrived back and saw the sleigh missing along with Nick's sack. Now, who could have done this? Where can it have gone? Call the finest for help, boys. Quick, dial 911. On hearing the call, the dispatcher looked grim and immediately put out an all-points bulletin. Before Santa knew it, the police came along. so eager to right this most terrible wrong. While Nick and his reindeer went down to the station to answer some questions, they tried to be patient. All law enforcement, along with their hounds, searched for the packed sleigh for many miles round. Detectives stood ready, dropped all of their cases, a look of resolve upon each of their faces. Their own kids at home were awaiting Nick's call. If he didn't show, their sweet faces would fall. So they called all their contacts and even their snitches, dragged some to the station to go through mug pictures. Now 2 more policemen were out on their beat, keeping neighborhoods safe by patrolling the streets. They answered the call just as soon as they heard, said, "Stealing Nick's sleigh, now that is absurd." They carefully covered all 6 housing floors when finally they knocked on the building's last door. 2 small children said, "May we help you?" The officer had asked. "Is your mommy here too?" Said 9-year-old Stephen with a sad little grin, "Mama is sick. Would you like to come in?" The officers entered and with care looked around, but no trees or gifts in this home could be found. "This is no way to spend Christmas," they whispered. "We must do something special for him and his sister." They decided right then to make a few calls, to bring joy, gifts, and Christmas to these sorrowful walls. Then they continued their search for the sleigh. Determined to find it, they vowed, come what may. When news reached the ears of their motorbike cops, they also decided to pull out all stops. They'd be on the job for the rest of the night. Only Santa could fill their kids' hearts with delight. They too tried to locate St. Nicholas' sleigh to bring joy to children on this Christmas day. In fact, all departments from bottom to top were among their best, even tired traffic cops. As they checked each stopped car, they went out of their way, but no one could find old St. Nicholas' sleigh. 2 highway patrolmen pulled over a car that was traveling way over the limit by far. As the vehicle stopped and the patrolman approached, a young man yelled out, "Just slow down, I'm your coach." They took in the scene and thought, this guy is crazy, then realized his young wife was having a baby. "Let us help you," they urged. "We have done this before." And an officer climbed in when he opened the door. Soon a sweet cry was heard, one that we all know, and a new babe was born, just like long, long ago. From detective to sergeant to captain to mayor, while even the president applied his own pressure. He called Santa Claus and promised him true, "I'm sending the FBI, CIA too." Nick kindly said, "Thank you, now that's quite a feat, but the police here are super, they don't miss a beat." He hung up the phone to the officers' applause, who cheered, "Your honorary Officer Claus." In one Yuletime home, children woke up their dad, crying, "Something has happened. It's awful, it's bad. Santa's sleigh has gone missing, and now he can't come." Then the horrified officer knew what he'd done. He called for the station, feeling deep sick inside. When Santa Claus heard, he just laughed till he cried. "You were doing your job, son. You're quite an honest man. But now you must leave to do ours if we can." And so on this beautiful, calm Christmas Eve, bundled up in a sleigh, Nick was ready to leave. He thanked them and said, "You're the finest police. May Christmas fill all of your hearts with great peace."
Well, thank you, Santa. That was very nice. Next, we have Rudolph, who has a story about the military and Santa Claus.
Yeah. The night before Christmas in the military. And my little reading is called "The Night Before Christmas in the Military." 'Twas the night before Christmas, and St. Nick couldn't believe all the letters and cards he had just lately received. Looking closely, he saw the majority came from children whose writing seemed almost the same. The gifts that they wanted were not for themselves. Would Nick find their folks with some help from his elves? Our parents are part of the U.S. military forces. Just help them be happy. cried thousands of voices. Protecting their country, they feel very proud, but we miss them so much that we're under a cloud. Well, Santa's kind heart was quite touched by their words. If I failed to do something, that would be absurd. He began making plans, something even more special this year. He kissed his dear wife goodbye, and then he left with this reindeer. As they flew through the skies on this sparkling night, Nick reread a letter of a little boy's plight. Dear Santa, it started, my first name is Tim. My dad flies a jet, but I'm lonely for him. Mom sent his gifts early, with Sue's and Bob's too, but mine would be special if he got it from you. He had made a small compass from twigs and green clay. His note said, for you, Dad, so you won't lose your way. St. Nick laughed to himself, quipped, now this should be fun. Are we ready to fly, boys? Let's visit Top Gun. They sped on their way, quite a sight to be seen, and soon cruised beside a swift-winged F-16. Tim's dad, codenamed Blaster, could not quite believe the sight from his cockpit on this Christmas Eve. He saw Santa waving, a grin on his face, looking almost as though he was itching to race. Nick held up a package for Blaster to see, who magically found the gift there on his knee. He unwrapped the package and then read Timmy's card, and a warm feeling started way down deep in his heart. He'd been feeling sorry and quite sad, it is true. No family at Christmas makes anyone blue. You wouldn't find Christmas bells, stockings, or fun in a cockpit like this one while flying Mach 1. He saluted St. Nick and said, while I'm away, make sure my family enjoys Christmas Day. Now that was a challenge, Nick called to his dear, but it's not going to get any easier, I fear. The next request asks us to dive way down deep. This young man serves proudly our U.S. Navy fleet. His mom and dad wrote, Santa, we have a son whose life is underwater. Now that's not much fun. Our Jim's missed so much, and we want him to know we'll celebrate Christmas when he returns home. All his presents wait under the tree. There'll be turkey and lamb for the whole family. You know what that means, St. Nick said with a grin. Boys, when's the last time we went for a swim? We know young Jim serves in a nuke submarine. We'll appear on its sonar, perhaps make a scene. Then scuba gear on, and with a great splash, they dived in the ocean as quick as a flash. While tracking the sub-screen, Jim heard a strong bleep, then spotted a strange sight in the great briny deep. He heard a faint tapping on the sub-wall outside. It's Morse code for me, Jim excitedly cried. Nick is sending a message from family at home. We'll always be with you wherever you roam. Jim thought, at this Christmas we must be apart, but we'll all be together down deep in my heart. And then there in my quarters I have a small tree with gifts from each one of them chosen by me. Now after this visit and on through the night, St. Nick and the reindeer saw incredible sights. A bomber named Stealth and a Black Hawk and Cobra, then carriers and AWACS, which made Nick quite sober. He knew soldiers and sailors who proudly serve on these special forces and rangers, commandos and SEALs. Nick met with them all and was truly inspired. Their courage, integrity, he greatly admired. Then something else happened on this memorable eve, a gift to the family they could not believe. A young Marine, Beth, who was serving abroad, had a daughter at home whom she truly adored. Now Amy, though quite ill, wrote Santa a note. "Just one wish I have, Nick. Please bring my mom home." So dear Santa Claus went to work on this task. He knew without thinking he'd have to move fast. He pulled a few heartstrings, some here and some there, that this mommy Marine soon soared home through the air. Beth crept up the driveway with nary a sound and peeked in the windows, snow deep all around. She watched her young family gathering round the tree, then opened the door softly, said, "It's just me." They all stopped and stared, not believing their eyes. The kids screamed and giggled while Mom and Dad cried. Then Beth's little daughter, without any qualms, looked up at her mother, rushed into her arms. "I knew you would come. Santa answered my letter. I told him, with you here, that I would get better." Now these special families on each Christmas day accept such conditions, whate'er comes their way. Since Santa Claus knows this, he loves to help out and always includes them on his Christmas route. Saluting the military, Nick said, "What a sight. May the peace of this season surround you tonight."
Nice. A 5 ho 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 rating from Santa.
That was an excellent read. It really was. You had something else to tell us.
Yes, this is a special year because this month we are celebrating or commemorating the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor Day. And some of us would remember that it's called a day that would live on in infamy. And we give thanks to all of those who served and our greatest generation who we're losing so many of, but we always want to remember how that day changed our lives and thank them for our freedom that we have today.
Thank you very much. Hey,
Nice. A 5 ho 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 rating from Santa.
I was going to wonder if you had a rating for her reading.
Yes.
A rating for the reading.
Rating for the reading.
Not for the.
Well, that's always rated as top notch.
Right.
Anyway, and you're supposed to say ho 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 rating.
Yeah, ho, ho, ho.
You're supposed to say ho 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 rating? Question.
A ho ho ho
Ho,
rating?
ho, ho rating?
Yes, and I say,
Never mind.
so let's start over again.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what you say.
Nice. A 5 ho 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 rating from Santa.
Ho, ho, ho rating?
Never mind. I think Senior Elf Peter has a story he would like to read.
I do. I have a story from our friend over in Spokane.
Hi, I'm Peter Stockwell, First Elf, and I'm going to read a selection from my friend Bob Mannion and his book, Santa's Heroes. The story is going to be called Sydney Meets Santa. Sydney's grip tightens on her mother's hand. It has been a long wait, but she can see where the line passes through the white picket fence gate, approaching Santa's giant chair. The line is still moving, much too slowly to suit Sydney. Holding onto her mother's hands for balance, the blonde, pony-tailed little girl leans out and peers around the people standing in front of her. Above the gate is a large sign showing simply SC. Sydney can feel the excitement in the air. It tickles her skin like when she rubs her feet on the carpet, and it makes her hair stand up. The line of impatient children and stressed parents winds its lazy way around and through Santa's village. A green fence enclosing low brown log cabins with green roofs keeps the children away from trouble and the toy displays. The cabins are workshops where Santa's elves make toys and presents for Santa to give to the world's children on Christmas. Santa brought a group of elves to the mall with him so the children can see the elves making toys. When Sydney looks at the windows, she can see elves busy at work. A small railroad train circles the workshop collecting the finished toys. The train passes through a tunnel and disappears on its way to deliver the toys to the storeroom to wait until they are packed into Santa's magic bag. The cabin eaves are decorated with candy canes hanging like icicles. If the candy canes were just a little closer to the ground, she might be able to reach up and grab them. Too high, she mumbles to herself. Oh well. Did you say something, Sydney? Her mother asks, kneeling down and wiping a smudge from Sydney's face with her thumb. Be patient, it won't be long now. Sydney pats her pocket to be sure the Christmas list is still there. Satisfied, she leans against her mother's leg. I wonder if Santa will remember me from last year. Last night, Mama read her the story of Santa Claus coming down the chimney with his bag of magic toys and presents. Sydney looked at the picture of her on Santa's lap from last year, a happy smile on her young face. Together, mother and daughter had planned this trip to see Santa Claus the next day. Sydney fell asleep, dreaming of Christmas morning and all the presents Santa would leave for her, and wondering what sugar plums are. She dreams of tiny reindeer and sleighs flying through the dark star-filled night, landing on the house roofs, and Santa popping down chimneys to leave toys and good things for Christmas morning. Waking early, Sydney jumps out of bed and hurries to the bathroom to wash and brush her teeth. She wants to be clean and smell good for Santa. Returning to her room, she carefully chooses the clothes she will wear. Soft red pants with lace at the bottoms, a Christmas sweater with a reindeer and Santa on the front, and her bright new red tennis shoes with green laces. Dressed, Sydney carefully checks herself in the mirror. Yup, all okay. I bet Santa likes my clothes. She smiles at her reflection. While Sydney eats her breakfast at the kitchen counter, her mother brushes and divides her hair into 2 ponytails, each tied with large fluffy red yarn. Sydney and her mother arrive at the mall to find many people are walking across the parking lot toward the mall entrance. Hurry, Mama! Sydney pulls at her mother's hand to hurry. There are so many people, we'll never get to see Santa. They find Santa's line goes clear around the mall's lobby. The line winds like a giant multicolored rope around the decorated Christmas trees and giant candy canes. Children wearing bright, shiny, smiling faces, clean hands, and new clothes wait impatiently. Noisy children pull at parents' hands and jump up and down in excitement. All these people are going to see Santa too? Sydney asks. I suppose so. Mother takes Sydney by the hand, and mother and daughter begin walking toward the end of the line. It isn't long before Sydney's patience begins to wear a bit thin. Mama, why aren't we there yet? How come we have to stand in line? I'm tired. Sydney frowns, looking up at her mother. I don't want to wait. Why can't we go first? Her mother bends over and picks her up. Now that's better, and I can see a lot better too, Sydney thinks to herself. Standing in the line in front of Sydney are 2 twin girls, their blonde ponytails tied with green and red yarn hair ribbons. They are about the same age and size as Sydney. An older brother is helping their mother keep the active girls in line. The family is just about to the entrance gate to Santa's village, and at the gate the twins start jumping up and down with their excitement. The boy has a handhold on one of the twins' coats, while the mother has a firm grip on the other twin's hand. The line passes through the gate and disappears as it winds among the log cabins and workshops. Sydney can just see Santa where he sits on a big red high-backed chair on the top of a green platform. Giant candy canes stand guard at each corner of the platform. Sydney watches a little girl in a green dress and long stocking hat climb the steps and across the platform. The girl sits onto Santa's lap and immediately begins whispering in Santa's ear. Sydney and her mother pass through the gate, and she can no longer see Santa. The line twists and turns between the cabins and workshops, finally ending at the steps in front of Santa's platform. At the foot of the platform are two girl elves. Sydney thinks they are a little big for elves. She guesses it is okay if Santa doesn't mind. Then she shouldn't either. Elves walk among the cabins and workshops, keeping everyone in line. As Sydney stares, an elf brings the lost toddler back to his mother, who a moment before had been shredding a handkerchief, a look of panic on her face. Sydney gazes around in wonder. Stuffed animals, baby deer and baby bears, and even a baby moose are standing on the snow between the buildings and along the sides of Santa's platform. A wooden train, big enough to ride on with two attached freight cars filled with new toys, chugs past. An elf pulls a red radio flyer wagon with a small elf as a passenger. He walks by. The small elf is holding a box of toy soldiers all dressed up and looking important. A stuffed baby elephant wearing a big pink ribbon around its neck is sitting on a blue saucer sled. Sydney has never seen so many toys and stuffed animals before. "I want down, Mama. I want to pet the baby deer. Please, please, Mama, please." Sydney starts squirming and keeps squirming until her mother set her on her feet, keeping a firm grip on Sydney's hand. Sydney pulls loose, and if her mother hadn't got the back of her sweater, she would have been among the toys. "No, Sydney, if you don't settle down, we're not going to do this. We're going to leave, and you won't see Santa at all." Her mother knelt down and turned Sydney around so she faced away from the toys and stuffed animals. "Now be good and don't fuss. Look, there's an elf taking pictures of the boys and girls sitting on Santa's lap. Maybe she'll take your picture with Santa like the one from last year." Sydney's mother reaches into her purse and takes out a hairbrush. She turns to Sydney around and begins brushing her hair back into place and redoing the red yarn ribbon hair bows. Finished, she puts the hairbrush away, turns Sydney so she faces the front of the line again, and resumes her patient wait. "Lift me up, Mama. I want to look in the windows." Tired mother reaches down, picks Sydney up so she can look in the log cabin windows. Sure enough, there are elves working away, making toys. And if you listen carefully, you can hear the Christmas music and the songs they are singing as they work. Soon it is Sydney's turn to go up the steps to where Santa waits. Sydney grabs and buries her face in her mother's coat. "I don't want to, Mama. I don't want to." She starts to cry. Sydney's mother reaches down and picks her up, turning to the people standing in line behind her as she asks them to change places. Holding Sydney, she talks calmly, and Sydney stops crying and agrees to see Santa. When it is her turn again, she climbs the stairs slowly, pulling herself up with the stair rail. All of a sudden, a decision made Sydney go up the steps in a rush. She has spotted the giant candy cane Santa is holding and motioning to her. When Sydney reaches where Santa is seated, she stops and studies Santa for a minute. His beard looks real, and he certainly has a big belly, and it did shake like jelly when he goes, "Ho, ho!" Santa's glasses are perched on the end of his nose. They look like they will fall off if he laughs any harder. Sydney climbs up in Santa's lap without any further encouragement. She grabs the candy cane Santa offers, and Santa asks her what she wants for Christmas. With her free hand, the one without the candy cane, she reaches into her pants pocket and takes out her Christmas list. Sydney made the list last night with red and green crayons on yellow paper. Santa asks, "Is this her list? Will she please read it to him?" Sydney knows exactly what is on the list. She reads it to Santa and points to each item. Santa is ho-hoing harder than ever. People in the crowd are also grinning and laughing along with Santa as the little girl reads her Christmas list to him. The elf taking pictures takes an extra and hands it to Sydney's mother, who is watching from the side of the platform. When Sydney is done reading the list to Santa, he asks, "Why don't you come visit me at the North Pole?" "How do I get there, Santa?" Sydney asks, her blue eyes wide with excitement. "You can always get there in your dreams. Bring along some friends if you like." Sydney looks very seriously at Santa. After a short time, she says, "Santa, I will come visit you and bring some of my dream world friends. Quickly she reaches up and gives Santa's beard a small tug. Nodding to herself, a satisfied smile on her face, Sydney climbs down, holding the candy cane like it's the most precious thing she possesses. Mama, see what Santa gave me, and his beard is real. Sydney ran to her mother shouting, Can I have it now? I want to eat it now, Mama. No, we're going to have lunch first. After lunch, if you're good and eat all of your food, you may have some. Taking Sydney by the hand, she leads her away from where Santa sits on his chair waving. Sydney twists around and waves back. From the book Santa's Heroes by Bob Banyan.
Excellent work. Do you have anything to add, Peter?
Well, I was going to ask our resident reindeer. This is where we could put this in.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to pass on about the Christmas spirit?
Oh, gosh,
Yeah, I'll put that in there.
Well, as a matter of fact, yes, this is a special year. This month we are commemorating the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, which was later called a day that will live in infamy. And we want to just pay special recognition to all of the veterans and the military, those who gave their lives and changed our world for so many reasons. And we are so grateful. And we call them the greatest generation. So a special ho, ho, ho from all of us to them. Santa, tell everyone about our continuing adventures with getting the sleigh certified as an environmentally safe vehicle.
Ah, yes. Nothing like dealing with government bureaucracies. Our sleigh is now certified as an environmentally friendly vehicle, which should keep the governor off of our backs. The reindeer eat renewable grasses and hay, and we have a new system to collect their methane to be used to power the workshops at the North Pole. Beats the heck out of the high gasoline prices.
Solar panels help to provide backup power, and a cold Santa is a grumpy Santa. Cold reindeer kick and bite until you warm them up.
Wow. Well, now I do believe we have another of our authors who has an extraordinary particular literary item to present in these days of our worldwide virus.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Bacon. I'm a German-American author, and today I'm reading from my book Home from Home, German-American Essays, and I'll tell you about what my Christmases in Germany used to be like. Christmas. Marley was dead to begin with. This line from Charles Dickens' novella A Christmas Carol used to kick off Christmas for me for many teenage and early tween years. I had wrought a tradition of my own to go to a theater in downtown Stuttgart, Germany, to listen to British actor Brian D. Barnes reenact the glorious tale of an avaricious recluse who gets converted to the real Christmas spirit. Every once in a while, my brother and a friend of mine tagged along to these unique, unforgettable productions. By that time, Christmas to me wasn't really about receiving gifts anymore. Ever since I had discovered it was my parents who did the probably carefully budgeted Christmas shopping for us, I also realized that most of my wishes, except books and music, were flashes in the pan and basically a waste. Christmas had become something way more spiritual to me. Of course, I don't deny that our family traditions of wreath making and advent calendars were quite hands-on and less spiritual. But they added so much to the Christmas ambiance in my little world, or that of Christmas baking. And it seemed like my mother was cranking out endless streams of Christstollen, coconut macaroons, tube cookies, cut-out cookies, nut crescents, and whatnot. Our home took up the fragrance of cinnamon and vanilla, a sweet cookie smell that mixed pleasantly with the harsher notes of pine twigs in a vase in the living room. Advent Sundays were celebrated with a church service in the morning and caroling in the afternoon. Our family, always very close-knit, became even more of a microcosm during Advent. Christmas time in German cities or towns is also unthinkable without Christmas markets and Christmas decorations. In my childhood, only few cities spent money on light chain decorations for their downtown pedestrian zones. Many were still filling in bomb holes from World War II or replacing temporary shacks from the 50s. The best decorations were always in the windows of toy stores, candy stores, and cafes, as well as the department store windows. The latter displayed whole stories or scenes from fairy tales all along their fronts. When I left Germany in 2010, it had almost become something of a competition between cities about who had the most glamorous Christmas tradition, the biggest Christmas market with the most creative stands, or who could showcase the best choir, nativity exhibition, or extra feature. My hometown Stuttgart's Christmas market had grown to triple its size ever since I was a child. It has even an ice rink on its central square, the Schlossplatz. The World Christmas Circus shows up on a fairground every year with the best of. There are fancy exhibits inside the old castle, whereas in the castle's inner court, choirs from all over the world vie for attention. Apart from that, each and every suburb has its own little Christmas market. Stuttgart's neighboring cities, Ludwigsburg and Esslingen, lure with Baroque ambiance, respectively a medieval fair as an addition. Christmas Eve, the main part of Christmas in Germany, always used to be a very quiet celebration for our family. Everything was scheduled down to listening to specific radio shows in the morning that we gathered around for in the kitchen, where my mother was cooking from scratch a lunch of the most delicious chicken soup and rice I will ever remember. After a nap in the afternoon, we almost always walked to church, over a mile each way, in a neo-Gothic building with balconies and a huge organ. Our eyes would search the crowd for people we knew, and there were crowds back then. Extra chairs had to be carried in, and people huddled real closely together in order to make room for more churchgoers, some of them still left standing. No better tearjerker than the ending of a Protestant Christmas service when the lights went down, the Christmas tree the only source of light, and the entire congregation singing by heart O du Fröhliche, O Sanctissima, accompanied by the fortissimo of the organ. After church, everybody gathered around town hall to listen to and sing along with the local brass band playing hymns. Walking home through the cold dark made the simple dinner of Weisswurst, mashers, and sauerkraut a festive warmer-upper. Then, finally, we ended up singing underneath a lit Christmas tree, a real one, with real candles, always. Living in the United States now, my Christmases have changed, of course. My husband and I are mixing family traditions. Now I am the one baking cookies, and I provide the Advent decoration. The Christmas tree goes up way before Christmas, unlike I've been used to from my former life, where it was decorated behind closed doors on December 23rd to be revealed only late on Christmas Eve. We do rides around the neighborhood to look for the most beautiful Christmas lights, and it's quite interesting how close stylish and gaudy can border on each other. We participate in Christmassy activities as they come. Christmas at the Orr Home in Stillicum, and caroling at its wagon shop, plum pudding parades at annual dinners, Christmas stores, and bazaars. We attend church service on Christmas Eve. We enjoy a German dinner on Christmas Eve and an American Christmas dinner on Christmas Day before we exchange our 3 gifts each. I would have to lie if I said I didn't miss German Christmases with its Christmas markets, church bells, hymns, and organ music. But my husband and I do combine the best parts of our memories and traditions, and we enjoy what we gain from the part that's novel to each of us, quietly and in blissful harmony. So, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone. Merry Christmas.
Let's go for it. Okay. Hello, my name is Elena, and I'm going to be reading from this collection of Christmas classics, a story by Louisa May Alcott called Tilly's Christmas. There are no pictures in it, otherwise I would be showing it to you. I'm so glad tomorrow is Christmas because I'm going to have lots of presents. So am I glad, though I don't expect any presents but a pair of mittens? And so am I, but I shan't have any presents at all. As the three little girls trudged home from school, they said these things, and as Tilly spoke, both the others looked at her with pity and some surprise, for she spoke cheerfully, and they wondered how she could be happy when she was so poor she could have no presents. "Don't you wish you could find a purse full of money right here in the path?" said Kate, the child who was going to have lots of presents. "Oh, don't I? If I could keep it honestly," and Tilly's eyes shone at the very thought. "What would you buy?" asked Bessie, rubbing her cold hands and longing for her mittens. "I'd buy a pair of large, warm blankets, a load full of wool, a shawl for Mother, and a pair of shoes for me, and if there was enough left, I'd give Bessie a new hat. And then she needn't wear Ben's old felt one," answered Tilly. The girls laughed at that, but Bessie pulled the funny hat over her ears, and she was much obliged, but she'd rather have candy. "Let's look, and maybe we can find a purse. People are always going about with money at Christmas time, and someone may lose it here," said Kate. So as they went along the snowy road, they looked about half them, half in earnest, half in fun. Suddenly, Tilly sprang forward, exclaiming, "I see it! I've found it!" The others followed, but all stopped disappointed. For it wasn't a purse, it was only a little bird. It lay upon the snow with its wings spread and feebly fluttering, as if too weak to fly. Its little feet were benumbed with cold. Its once bright eyes were dull with pain, and instead of a blithe song, it could only utter a faint chirp now and then, as if crying for help. "Nothing but a stupid old robin. How provoking!" cried Kate, sitting down to rest. "I shan't touch it. I found one once and took care of it, and the ungrateful thing flew away the minute it was well," said Bessie, creeping under Kate's shawl and putting her hands under her chin to warm them. "Poor little birdie! How pitiful he looks, and how glad he must be to see someone coming to help him. I'll take him home, and I'll take him up gently, and I'll carry him to my mother. Don't be frightened, dear. I'm your friend." Tilly knelt down in the snow, stretching her hand out to the bird with the tenderest pity in her face. Kate and Bessie laughed. "Don't stop for that thing. It's getting late and cold. Let's go on and look for the purse," they said, moving away. "You wouldn't leave it to die," cried Tilly. "I'd rather have the bird than the money, so I shan't look any more. The purse wouldn't be mine, and I should only be tempted to keep it, but this poor little thing will thank me and love me, and I'm so glad I came in time." Gently lifting the bird, Tilly felt its tiny cold claws cling to her hand and saw its dim eyes brighten as it nestled down with a grateful chirp. "Now I've got a Christmas present after all," she said, smiling as they walked on. "I always wanted a bird, and this one will be such a pretty pet for me. He'll fly away the first chance he gets and die anyhow, so you'd better not waste your time over him," said Bessie. "He can't pay you for taking care of him, and my mother says it isn't worth while to keep folks that can't help us," added Kate. "My mother says, 'Do as you'd be done by,' and I'm sure I'd like anyone to help me if I was dying of cold and hunger. 'Love your neighbor as yourself,' is another one of her sayings. The bird is my little neighbor, and I'll love him and care for him as I often wish our rich neighbor would love and care for us," answered Tilly, breathing her warm breath over the benumbed bird, who looked up at her with confiding eyes. "Quick to feel and know a friend." "What a funny girl you are," said Kate, caring for that silly bird and talking about loving your neighbor in that sober way. "Mr. King don't care a bit for you, and he never will, though he knows how poor you are. so I don't think your plan amounts to much. I believe it, though, and I shall do my part anyway. Good night. I hope you all have a Merry Christmas and lots of pretty things, answered Tilly as they parted. Her eyes were full, and she felt so poor as she went out alone toward the little house where she lived. It would have been so pleasant to know that she was going to have some of the pretty things that all the children love to find in their full stockings on Christmas morning, and pleasanter still to have been able to give her mother something nice. So many comforts were needed, and there was no hope of getting them, for they could barely get food and fire. Never mind, Bertie. We'll make the best of what we have and be merry in spite of everything. You shall have a happy Christmas anyway, and I know God won't forget us even if everyone else does. She stopped a minute to wipe her eyes and lean her cheek against the bird's soft breast, finding great comfort in the little creature, though it could only love her, nothing more. See, Mother, what a nice present I found, she cried, going in that with a cheery face that was like sunshine in the dark room. I'm glad of that, dearie, for I haven't been able to get my little girl anything but a rosy apple. Poor bird. Give it some of your warm bread and milk. Why, Mother, what a big bowlful. I'm afraid you gave me all the milk, said Tilly, smiling over the nice steaming supper that stood ready before her. I've had plenty, dear. Sit down and dry your wet feet and put the bird in my basket on this warm flannel. Tilly peeped in the closet and saw nothing there but dry bread. Mother's given me all the milk and is going without her tea, 'cause she knows I'm hungry. Now I'll surprise her and she'll have a good supper too. She is going to split wood and I'll fix it while she's gone. So Tilly put down the old teapot, carefully poured out part of her milk, and from her pocket produced a great plummy bun that one of the school children had given her and she had saved for her mother. A slice of the dry bread was nicely toasted, and the bit of butter set by her to put on it. When her mother came in, there was the table drawn up in a warm place, a hot cup of tea ready, and Tilly and Bertie waiting for her. Such a poor little supper, and yet such a happy one. For love, charity, and contentment were guests there, and that Christmas was a blither one than that, up at the great house where lights shone, fires blazed, a great tree glittered, and music sounded as the children danced and played. We must go to bed early, for we've only wood enough to last over to tomorrow. I shall be paid for my work the day after, and then we can get some, said Tilly's mother as they sat by the fire. If my bird were only a fairy bird, who could give us 3 wishes, how nice it would be. Poor dear, he can't give me anything, but it's no matter, answered Tilly, looking at the robin who lay in the basket, with his head under his wing, a mere little feathery bunch. He can give you one thing, Tilly, the pleasure of doing good. That is one of the sweetest things in life, and the poor can enjoy it as well as the rich. As her mother spoke, with her tired hands softly stroking her little daughter's hair, Tilly suddenly started and pointed to the window, saying in a frightened whisper, I saw a man's face looking in. It's gone now, but truly I saw it. Some traveler attracted by the light, perhaps. I'll go and see. And Tilly's mother went to the door. No one was there. The wind blew cold, the stars shone, the snow lay white on the field and wood, and the Christmas moon was glistening in the sky. What sort of face was it? Asked Tilly's mother, coming back. A pleasant sort of face, I think, but I was so startled I don't know what it was like. I wish we had a curtain there, said Tilly. I like to have our light shone out in the evening, for the road is dark and lonely just here, and the twinkle of our lamp is pleasant to people's eyes as they go by. We can do so little for our neighbors. I'm glad to cheer the way for them. Now put these poor old shoes to dry and go to bed, dearie. I'll come soon. Tilly went, taking her bird with her to sleep in his basket nearby, lest he should be lonely in the night. Soon the little house was dark and still, and no one saw the Christmas spirits at their work that night. When Tilly opened the door the next morning, she gave a loud cry, clapped her hands, and then stood still, quite speechless with wonder and delight. There before the door lay a great pile of wood, all ready to burn, a big bundle and a basket with a lovely nosegay of winter roses, holly, and evergreen tied to the handle. Oh, Mother, did the fairies do it? Cried Tilly, pale with her happiness as she seized the blanket while her mother took the bundle. Yes, dear, the best and dearest fairy in the world, called Charity. She walks abroad at Christmas time, does beautiful deeds like this, and does not stay does not say to be thanked," answered her mother with full eyes as she did the parcel. There they were, the warm, thick blankets, the comfortable shawls, the new shoes, and best of all, a pretty winter hat for Bessie. The basket was full of good things to eat, and on the flowers lay a paper saying, "For the little girl who loves her neighbor as herself." "Mother, I really think my bird is a fairy, and all these splendid things came from him," said Tilly, still laughing and crying with joy. It really did seem so, for as she spoke, the robin flew to the table, hopped to the nosegay, and perched among the roses, began to chirp with all his little might. The sun streamed in on flowers, bird, and happy child, and no one saw a shadow glide away from the window. No one ever knew that Mr. King had seen and heard the little girls the night before, or dreamed that the rich neighbor had learned a lesson from the poor neighbor. And Tilly's bird was a fairy bird, for by her love and tenderness to the helpless thing, she brought good gifts to herself, happiness to the unknown giver of them, and a faithful little friend who did not fly away but stayed with her till the snow was gone, making summer for her in the wintertime. The end.
All of us in the Bremerton Kitsap Access television broadcast area should remember what the true meaning of Christmas involves. Giving, brother and sisterhood, sharing with family and friends whenever possible.
And reaching out to the members of the armed forces who always are in our hearts because they serve far away and they can't be with their friends and family during the holiday season. Plus the first responders who work 365 days a year, even on Christmas, especially in this year of the coronavirus.
And remember how this season should be about love, trust, and goodwill to all.
Especially the trust part. Please trust that Santa in his red suit is not a burglar.
Yeah. We at CLAW have a mission statement to help authors and artists become known to the public, to expose their artistic endeavors to the residents of Kitsap County and to the world. Thus, we plan to continue this endeavor as long as the BCAT staff and the viewing public support us.
CLAW exists for the artists, the authors, to help with marketing, distribution, and publicity. Once we beat this coronavirus from Wuhan, which we are with vaccinations, we've been meeting with the first and third Wednesdays of every month at the Sparrow's Pizza on Kitsap Way in Bremerton, Washington at 7 p.m. All are welcome. Also, for filmmakers and actors, we have a related group, Kitsap Peninsula Filmmakers, which meets at the second Tuesday of every month at the Family Pancake House on Wheaton Way at 7 p.m. Everyone is welcome.
But we are not the only group out here. There are many independent writers and critique groups in Western Washington.
Hopefully, as everything opens up with the vaccines, thanks to Operation Warp Speed, more and more groups will be out there and more authors will come forward to CLAW.
And CLAW, along with Blue Forge Group, is planning on events in the future to support local authors, writers, musicians, and visual artists. We will meet and beat the challenges of the evil COVID germs. So keep an eye out on our Facebook page from individual authors about all the events that are coming up in 2022 as we start to gather again and share our great works. This program will be broadcast at Christmas time, of course, in the Bremerton Kitsap Television Access broadcast area. But check with the BCAT schedule for upcoming shows. We wish to thank the BCAT personnel for, without them, none of this would be possible. And of course, the viewing audience, that's you, who enjoy and hope, who enjoy us, and we hope that you will continue viewing in the coming year.
And as you noticed, we're not filming at the BCAT studios right now. And hopefully the mayor of Bremerton and his staff will eventually open the studio for refilming. Right now, we are actually filming at our Elf's Church.
St. Anthony of Egypt Episcopal in Silverdale on Old Frontier Road.
Please, have a good day, a delightful Christmas season, a great New Year, and enjoy all your family time together.
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. And remember the milk and cookies.